founder of Dance Ninjas and traveler across 231 cities and 35 countries to teach dance. And today we're going to talk about how to teach a beginning weekly lesson, right? Like a drop-in lesson that anybody can come to, and it's easy enough for a beginner that's coming for their very first time and they've never learned any dance, while it's still interesting for your experienced dancers that have come to last week's lesson or the week before, or maybe even been coming for the whole year to all your weekly classes. How do you teach to them so that it remains interesting while easy enough for the beginner, right? And we're going to do it in such a way that you can actually have an entire year's worth of content taught to beginners that never repeats. Yet it's easy enough for anyone to just drop in and take that drop-in lesson from you for the very first time and get something out of it. Ideally be able to get out there and dance for the night, right? But never repeating, so that your intermediate and advanced dancers or people that have already been coming to those classes still want to come to them because they're still interesting, right? And also to keep you from getting burnt out, right? Because it's kind of boring teaching the same thing over and over every week. So giving little changes to it, making it different, can be a lot of fun. So we're going to show you how to, make an entire year's worth. That's 52 lessons. And we'll actually show you how to get 56 lessons that don't repeat. But you could expand that to hundreds of lessons. You could shorten that to 12 lessons. It's your call how often you want to go through before you repeat. I'd say a year is extensive. That's way longer than you need. You could do 6 months and you'd still be totally fine. You could do 1 month and probably be fine. Although you're probably good to do maybe every 3 months or something like that. So 3 months would be 12 weeks of lessons. 12 to 13 lessons would cover 3 months, right? Or 26 lessons to cover 6 months, or 52 lessons to cover a full year. Anyway, we'll show you how to do that. But first, before we get into that, we need to take a look at our dance instructor blueprint, right? And this is, I call it the world-class dance instructor blueprint, because it really can get you to become world-class, but at the same time, no matter what your level is, this is a great blueprint for you. Now today we're going to ignore the processes section for the purposes of this class. We're just going to talk about the dancer section and the teacher section. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to look through my dancer section and just try to find some beginner appropriate categories. What are things that I could teach to beginners? And so I'm looking at my techniques right now, right? The technique of grounding, right? The technique of connect first, or shopping cart, or visual lead follow, counterbalance. These are all connection techniques that I have, right? And then I have my musicality techniques of feeling the music, matching the volume, playing with phrasing, choreography, reacting to the music, right? And then we have like miscellaneous category of emotion, etiquette, creating lines, confidence, and meta, or making every dance amazing. Now, these are my things, and this is just a small little bit of mine, right? I have a huge, huge list of different things that we could go through, but it doesn't matter about mine, it matters about what you have. So I want you to go through and brainstorm all the different things that, like the techniques and the concepts that you can teach people that will improve their dancing, right? And that's one way of going about this, right? Now there's a couple different ways, but that's the first way. So think about those things, right? Get a sense of what are your connection things, right? If you haven't brainstormed this already, you can actually go to sign in to the members area and go to the World Class Dance Instructor Blueprint. Hover over the teacher trainings, go to the World Class Dance Instructor Blueprint, and you'll see this information there. Or if you go to my website, on the right side of the page of any of the blog posts, there should be something that says World Class Dance Instructor Blueprint. You can download it, sign up and download that there. And then you'll get the gist of how this works, because I'm not going to explain it today. Once you have your options, right, then you want to take these options and you're going to put it on a different section. Or we're going to go into creating something later. So I want you to remember right now, the ones I'm going to remember, because I think they're important for beginners, are, let's see, we're going to go with connect first. We're going to go with visual. And let's go with shopping cart. Yeah, and then here we're going to talk about feeling, volume, and reacting. Yeah, and here, let's see. We could talk about etiquette. Confidence. I'd say for the most part, I'd probably leave those off, and these are the core ones that I would go with to start. But you could have some more. We'll go with those 7. Okay, so now the next thing I'm going to look at is my teaching things. What are great ways to teach, right? And I've got my fail to succeed method, my minimize versus exaggerate method, pirates versus ninjas method, each one teach one method, Jedi Force, Superman, right? Games, dispel myths, and those are things that improve my students. Here's some things that make sure that students love the classes, right? We've got games, we've got dispelling myths, show them off, right? Show your students off. Real world relationships, like is one. WWHW, these are all my techniques. And again, I explain these in the blueprint if you download that. So now I'm going to pick some of these that I think are great pretty much all the time. I think fail to succeed is always great. I think minimize versus exaggerate is always great. Jedi Force, Superman, and you notice Superman's on here twice. And actually some of these should be down here as well. I just didn't have room for them all. But a lot of them cover both. Yeah, and if you can pick ones that cover both, that's even better. Like these three definitely, actually, yeah, all 4 of those cover both. So those are great ones to choose. And the 5th one, WWHW. That one mostly is definitely ensures they love classes, but doesn't necessarily do both. So we said Superman. I want one more. Let's do Pirates. Either of these do both. I'm going to do each one, teach one. Okay, so now I have my ideas of what I'm going to do. Fail to succeed, minimize versus exaggerate, each one, teach one, Jedi Force, and Superman. Right? And now I got to remember that, right, and then bring it to the next section. Now, so I put 13 weeks here just to give an example, but if you are doing 56 weeks, you could fill out the whole 56-week chart, or sorry, 56. If you're doing 52 weeks, you could fill out all 52 weeks if you want. You'll see the concept after about, I think, 8. You'll start to see how it works. So the first thing we want to do is we want to talk about a position or move in this section. So when I think about if you're teaching more of a fusion style, then I usually choose positions. If you're teaching more of a dance, then I'd probably choose moves. So in an example as a dance form, like in Lindy Hop, I think about what are my basic moves that my beginners want to learn, right? And so in Lindy Hop, well, first I want them just to learn to be able to walk with each other. That's almost always my start is walk. And I recommend you do that with any dance form, is just get people to learn how to walk together and then get them to do the more complicated steps that build up the basic. So I like that as one move or something like that, yeah, movement. And then we can have, in Lindy Hop, I would probably go with Charleston next. Right? So this, which builds off walking, but it's simple enough that it can be taught on its own as well. And then I might, on week 3, go with 6 count. 6 count steps, right? And then on week 4, I'd probably go to 8 count or swing outs. And then I'd repeat. So walk, Charleston, 6 count, and 8 count, right? And that just repeat all the way down. And I'm using 4 as an example, but maybe you have like 8 basic things that you want to make sure are in there. And you have 2 options with that. You can either do 1 each week, or you can do 2 per lesson, right? Let's say you wanted to do 2 per lesson, then you'd be like, okay, walking and side hold, right? And you could build it that way so that it still, if you have 8 things, it still repeats after every 4 lessons, right? I like 4, repeating after 4, but again, it's up to you how you want that to work. Now, this is if we were to pick moves, right? What if we picked positions instead, right? So now in like a fusion concept, you can really pick whatever move you want. You pick the position that you're going to teach in, and then you let them choose the moves based on the music and all that kind of stuff, right? So if you're going more that route, then your position is going to be, let's say, side by side would be one, where they're standing right next to you. If this is my partner, it's like we're side by side, right? So we have side by side. And then we could have facing each other, like a normal closed position, head on, like in tango, the traditional tango pose, where they're facing each other, or blues often has it, but like basically if this is my partner, I am there with them. So facing could be a position. And then open could be a position where it's just where you're more like if you're holding hands in an open position and they're connected just by the hands, right? And then you could put a 4th one here, or let's say that these 3 are like super common, those are the most common, and then you have maybe 3 more that are still somewhat common, but maybe less common, slightly less common. Then you could put miscellaneous here, right? And you can rotate in something in that spot. And I'll show you how that works in a second, but now let's do these again. Let's say we have side by side, facing, open, miscellaneous. I love the miscellaneous. You'll see how it works in a sec, but it's fun. Okay, so now we have 13 weeks, and you would just keep repeating this over 52 weeks or however long you want your series to go, right? And as of right now, basically the series ends every 4, right? So it goes and then 4, there's a series end, there's a series end, and there's a series end. So the beginning is on the 13th or the 5th or the 9th week, right? But the cool thing is now let's add a concept in to it. So we've got 4 different positions. So let's say we only had 3 concepts that we really wanted to teach people. Let's say if we think back to the teaching stuff, let's say we wanted to teach 1 musicality thing, right? The musicality thing would be, let's say we wanted to teach volume, because it's super easy to do at the beginning, super easy beginner thing. And then for the connection concept, we wanted to teach connect first. And then for the 3rd thing, you could pick another of either of these, or you could pick the miscellaneous. We had etiquette. I'm going to pick visual connection, just for fun, as my 3, right? Now, if you have more things, if you have like 7 different things that you want to repeat, you could just keep going and do 7, right? But I'm going to show the example if you only had 3 concepts that you really thought were important for your beginners to get, and everything else was for more intermediate dancers, right? So if you only had 3, then you repeat here. You'd go, okay, do volume again, and connect first here, and visual. Do you see what's happening here? So with only 4 positions or 4 moves, right, and only 3 concepts, right, you never have a class repeat. If you notice, side by side, is taught while teaching volume concepts. So they're working all their side-by-side position stuff while focusing on the concept of volume. Then next week, facing each other with the concept of connecting first, right? And then they focus on open position movement with the concept of visual lead follow, right? And then you go into the miscellaneous category, or it could be a fourth category that you always do, right? Doesn't matter. Let's say this category is always dips, right? So dips could be there. And then dips is with volume. It's got its category here. And then next time when you do side by side, instead of doing it with volume, you're doing it with the connect first. And instead of doing facing with connect first, you're doing it with the visual, right? And so these offsets, you never get a repeat until side by side volume finally comes back on week 13, right? So if you have 4 things, 4 times 3 concepts equals 12 weeks of class before you ever repeat, right? Now, what if you had 8? Here, let me make that big. If you had 8 moves times 7 concepts, right? Then you get 56. So that's one way that you could get 56 different things, to just come up with some more concepts, right, that you want to teach beginners, and more moves or positions that you want to teach those beginners, and then let it rotate through, right? Another way that's even cooler, that's going to expand this even more, but we'll get there in a sec. I want to show you a few other options first. Now, let's see, 8 times 7. You could also do, if you only had 4 moves, but you had 7 concepts, so 7 different concepts in that other section, then you would get 28, right? 6 months. 26 is 6 months. So you'd have over 6 months of content. Just one way of doing it. Now, another way that you could do this, I'm not going to write it here, I'm just going to talk about it, is you could do this first 4 weeks on the volume concept. So every time you get a different position or move while always keeping the same concept. And then you do all the same stuff, but you change the concept around, right? And the other thing now with miscellaneous, if you want this to be miscellaneous, like, and stay miscellaneous rather than always the same thing, right? Then this week you could have, let's say, tandem is your position. This week could be, what's the other opposite of tandem? I call it sweetheart, shadow, right? So basically the only difference is, like, when you're kind of got offset, not completely side by side, but you've got them offset, I believe this is shadow, and then tandem is when you're directly behind the person. At least that's how some people, it doesn't really matter as long as you have your ideas of where it is. But so you can see, you can switch up your miscellaneous, because those are less common, so they don't need to repeat, right? But you've got them coming through, and then let's say your last miscellaneous is like strange positions, like shoulder, shoulder to shoulder, or linking the arms or something like that. But you can change them up and just get people used to really weird positions and fun positions, right? Let's go with fun. So that's how you could do that. And again, if you wanted, you could teach 2 things here. You could teach a position and a move. You could teach 2 moves. But you get the idea of how to expand this out in that way. Now, I want to show you, what if you only have 3 things? As I said, you only have 4 positions and 3 concepts, but you still want to expand this out to over a year worth of stuff without repeating. Then what we do, add a 3rd category. We go into method. So the method, as we talked about before, for teaching is in that in your blueprint. There's the whole teacher section, right? And in the teacher section, that's where you want to put down the things like, let's say we've got fail to succeed. And let's say we just had 5 of these, right? So fail to succeed, pirates versus ninjas, each one teach one. And what is next? Let's go min is exaggerate. And the last one will be Superman. Right, and then just repeat them. And do you see what's going to happen here? I want you to think about that. What is going to happen when we do this? And now with only 4 and 3, remember this is repeated, side-by-side volume. So fail to succeed should be next, but it's already been here. Pirates versus ninjas, we actually have each one teach one is next. And this happens the exact same way. It offsets itself. So you can see it actually offsets by, it skips one and goes to the next. So, so normally, if fail, like it's not fail to succeed here, and it's not the next one, it's not pirates and ninjas, it actually skips to be each one teach one, which means if we look, the next time through that it goes through and this repeats, each one teach one, it's not going to be that because it was there. It's going to skip, minimize, and exaggerate and go to Superman. And then the next time, it's going to skip fail to succeed and go to pirates. And then it's going to skip each one teach one and go to minimize versus exaggerate. And then it's finally going to skip Superman and finally come back to fail to succeed. So it does this, and just skips one each time. And then you still get 1, 2, 3, 4. It still covers all 5. So it shifts them exactly like we want it to, right? And so if you look at this, 4 times 3 times, which was 12 times 5 equals 60. Now, the class is never going to repeat after 60 different times of doing it. Does that make sense? Yeah, so 4 times 3 times 5 is 60. And again, if you increase these numbers, if you went to 8 there, you'd have 120 here, right? So you can see that the combinations are endless. The key is in having something that, just having an outline for yourself and using that blueprint to build your outline so that it's really solid. Now, some of the mistakes I see people make when they do this is, one, they pick things that don't make sense for beginners. Don't try to fill out 8 different positions if there aren't 8 positions that make sense for your beginners. You can, like, if you really want to stretch your beginners, like throw in that miscellaneous once every month or so, and have the miscellaneous be that time where you throw something in to stretch them. But pick things that really make sense for who you're teaching, those beginner, especially those beginners, because these are drop-in lessons for beginners. And so that's how I would build drop-in lessons to really cover and make sure everybody gets what they want. And so if you want your advanced dancers or even your intermediate dancers or people that basically have already taken your classes to continue taking the class, maybe the exact same class over again, there's a few different things that you want to do, right? And the first thing is just to tell them, to remind them that taking basic classes is valuable, and repeating the classes is valuable, and at any level. And there's a couple reasons why. Repetition, right? Just repeating something is really great. That's important. We all know that. But I think the other thing that's even maybe more valuable is as you get more experience as a dancer, you hear different things from the exact same instructions. So if I tell somebody, you know, I talk about counterbalance and this dip or something like that, or whatever I talk about, if I talk about that to someone who's a beginner, and then I talk about that same thing in the exact same way a year later, that same person is going to hear it differently. They're going to understand different things about what I'm talking about. So just having them go through the class again is helpful, not just for repetition, but also because they're in a different place. So they're going to learn something different while they go through that class. Remind them about that. Like they might know it subconsciously, but if you don't point it out to them, if you don't say something about it, then it's easy for them to forget. Does that make sense? So the other thing that I would say is, how to say this? Another important thing to do, or I don't know if it's important, but a valuable thing to recognize is that not everyone needs to take your basic class, right? And I know a lot of instructors really want everyone to take their basic class and really get those basics down. And so sometimes we project things onto even the more advanced dancers that maybe don't need that class as much. And we're like, oh no, you got to come take the beginner class, when they don't necessarily need that class as much. And again, yes, of course they could benefit from it, but is that class really designed for that person? If it's not designed for them, it's okay for them not to take that class. Create a class that is designed for them, right? And then, and I realize that also means creating more classes. That requires having enough people to get into those classes, which is a whole nother thing, getting enough people into your classes. Very important, but not today's topic. The next thing I'd say is, if they do come to your class, you got to make sure not to treat them as if they're just there to help, right? I know a lot of times that's kind of what happens, is they end up being there in a way where they're just helping rather than you actually giving them value, right? So one very simple way to give them value without taking too much time from the rest of class is just to push them a little bit more. And you can do it publicly. You can actually say to everyone, you know, as you're teaching a movement or something, you can say, oh, and if you're more advanced, like Jason, our more advanced dancer here, then try this. And show them a variation. Maybe you show it sped up or slow down in different areas, or just show them something that pushes them and makes them try something a little different. And there's two things that are important about what I just said there. One is that you're giving that person props. You're saying, hey, this person's advanced, you know, and just pointing them out as that, which makes them feel good. And also lets your other people know that an advanced dancer is still taking a beginner lesson. So you're letting them know that it's happening, right? If you don't want to point someone out, that's fine. You could just say, if you're more advanced, you can try this thing. People out and just being like this, giving them props. And the other thing you can do is just, or the other benefit about that is you're actually giving something that pushes their dancing, right? That's like pushing them, and they might be doing that on their own already. You might be seeing them in the corner, like just practicing slightly different variations on the movement. And maybe that's what you do, is you see them doing it and you just tell everyone what they're doing. And oh, if you're more advanced like Jason, you can actually try this or that with it as he's doing now, you know. And the nice thing about that is it's confirming that it's okay for him to be doing it because he's at that level, without like saying everybody should be doing it, you know. So people that see him doing it like go, oh, you know, they might want to try it, and it's okay for them to try it, but they recognize that it's really more for the advanced person. So you're just calling that out and also giving them props for thinking of how to push their own dancing. Another thing that I want to talk about, while you're in the class, another way to get them to come to the next class is to tell them what's coming next. So when you're done with that first class, side-by-side volume, you can say, so next week, we're going to work on facing each other while connecting first, you know. And you could say that. You don't have to say those exact things. You could show a move that you're going to cover within those two concepts.
it's up to you how you do it, but just letting them know what's coming next week to let them like get excited for that is a way that some people will come back. Both just letting them know we're not repeating the same thing over is good, like letting them know that, but also like giving them a little preview of what they're gonna learn is really exciting as well. Yeah, so I would say like that's the other great thing. That's the other great thing about prepping all of this is that you have it ahead of time so you know what you're going to tell them next, right? And again, you can take this in two different ways. You can take this in, this is what I'm teaching, but they're not going to know, and still show them like a move or something like that that involves these things, but doesn't necessarily say, you know, we're going to learn this they're kind of nerdy things, maybe that's not as interesting for them. If you can speak about it in a way that makes it interesting for them, then definitely just say those things. But if not, just show them a cool move or show them what you're going to do next time so that they know it's going to be slightly different or it's going to be something different. The other thing is, another cool thing that you could have is just like print out the blueprint. Maybe just the dancer section, but have like a mind map of what it is, like all the different concepts that you could learn to become an amazing dancer, right? Because the more they see that and go, oh wow, there's all those things I haven't learned yet, the more they're gonna wanna come take the classes. So you could have some big old poster on the wall that just has like word it yet, but something that's along the lines of all the things you need to know. But I wouldn't use need to know. I'd probably use like all the things you can learn to become a great dancer, you know, so it's more of a can thing rather than a have to. Oh, the other thing I would say is once they have gone through the series, like whether that be 4 weeks, 8 weeks, a full year, whatever you want to make that series of like, okay, they've now taken all the classes and now they're going to start repeating stuff, then you can actually either give them a discount or let them take it for free. I would do a discount because I would say there's still value in taking something again. So I wouldn't give it to them for free yet. But I would recognize, hey, like you have been through this before. So yes, but we want to encourage you to continue to do it. So we're going to give you a discount if you come take the series again. And you could charge them, you know, for the whole series at once at that point. That's probably what I would recommend, is just charge for the whole series at one time or for a chunk of the series or something, and at like 50% or something like that. And you could do that once, you could do that twice, you could do it 50% the first time and then 75% off if they take it a third time. It's kind of up to you how you play with that. And then if there's someone specific that you really want to be in the class, go ahead and offer 1 or 2 people that you really want to be in that class the freebie. Offer the freebie as a standard. I would only offer that as like, I really want you to be in this class. Like, I think you're going to bring value to everyone else as well. So would you take it if I gave it to you for free? But yeah, and then the other thing that I would do is when you're talking about selling your classes, I would tell them what you want them to do and what most people do. So what I mean by that is, like, you might say something like, and just so you guys know, most people go through our series class like 2 or 3 times before going into our intermediate courses. So don't be afraid to go ahead and redo this series after you've done it once. Once you feel like you're starting to get repeating material, go ahead and do it a second or even a third time before jumping into the intermediate class. And if you don't have that as a norm yet, you don't have to say, that would be lying to say most people do this. Ideally, you could say that because it's really powerful to let them know what most people do. And like, so most people do like to do what other people do. So if you can say that most people do it, go ahead and say that. But if that's not true yet, then just say, we recommend most people take our series 2 or 3 times before moving on to the intermediate class. Of course, if that's not what you want people to do, then have them just move on when you recommend. But that's a way to get people to come back to classes. Let's say you didn't even have this method. Let's say you were just teaching the exact same class over and over, then you could say that, you know, we recommend you come back and take this exact same class 2 or 3 times before moving in to our series or something like that. And if you say, you know, we recommend that most people do this, people like that, like being a part of the crew. So the last tip I have for you is show them they aren't doing the basics yet, or get them, how do I say this? You want to show people they aren't doing the basics yet, or you want to get them to realize that if that's the reason they're not coming to class. So there's usually 2 reasons people don't come to class. One is they just don't realize that they could improve, like they don't realize that there's anything of value to get from the class. They don't realize how easy it is for them to improve by taking a class. Those are 2 different things. It's more often they don't realize they can improve that much by taking the class, but occasionally they just don't realize there's anything more to learn. And so depending on what you feel is the reason they're not coming, or if you're talking to a group, the reason the majority aren't coming, then you want to speak to them so that you overcome that and show them something. So they don't realize that that the class will give them stuff to make them improve, then you've got to show them that they don't see something yet, right? So you can give a tip of the night where you show, you know, use the minimization versus exaggeration technique to show them something that they didn't see they were doing, right? Minimize it, they can't see like what's going on, and then you exaggerate it, oh, okay. And then you say, you know, but you guys aren't doing it that big, you're doing it this small, and since you couldn't see it when it was this small, that stage, right? And we want you to improve on that. If you come to class, we'll work on that more. That's one way to get people to come into class, you know. But more likely than not, if you're talking about beginners or intermediate or people that you want to come bring to the beginner class, it's just about making them realize that taking a class can skyrocket their dancing. And in that case, you want to give them what they call a little victory, right? So just some small tip that gets them to go from wherever they are to a little bit better, right? Where they feel that success, right? And that same thing at a tip of the night, when you've got the whole group together, you can give them a tip that gives them a little success. The key though is to teach them something that they actually experience the success. They experience the improvement in their dancing. And if you can do that, then they're gonna start wanting to come to more classes.